Hi, I'm Amanda from Woodland Community College's FBLA program, and this is Pat Redman. He is here from Father Patty's. He's the owner, and he's going to give us his story about how he opened his business today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, Amanda. I own, my name's Pat Redman. I own Father Patty's local Irish public house. Public house is shortened to the word pub, so people call it an Irish pub. We opened the pub up in 2016.
Okay.
We took possession of the building in January of 2016. By May of 2016, we were up and open for business. It's a long story getting there, and it's a long story surviving it. We've had a pandemic in the middle of the whole thing, and of course, that threw anybody and everybody's plans out the window. So as far as who I am and how do we get to a point where somebody wants to own an Irish pub, I make a long story short. I was a music major in college at Cal State Long Beach. I got a chance to be in the Edinburgh Tattoo in 1980, which is a military music festival out in front of. We were actually the first non-military group ever to be asked into the Tattoo, which was really quite an honor. If you go YouTube Edinburgh Tattoo 1980 and look up Long Beach, you'll see this. Sorry about that. To make a long story short, fell in love with the pub culture while I was over there. Thought this would be the coolest job in the world. I was a musician though, so I was going to go be a teacher and be a musician, all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, if that doesn't work, then I guess, I'll go open a pub.
Okay.
And as it would happen, a few years later, the music thing didn't work out. Sorry, all you music majors. Then I said, okay, well, I guess I'll open a pub. And I was talking to my wife, and it's like, now we've got a little bit too much life going on for that to happen right now. So moved forward in other plans, jobs, kids, colleges, you name it, life goes on. When I turned 50, so that's a few years later, when I turned 50, I said, I'd very much like to be doing the pub.
So you always wanted to do that?
I've wanted to do that for
a very long time.
I was 19 years old, by the way, in 1980.
Okay.
So a few years later, when I turned 50, I said, I'd very much like to be doing it. And my wife, Kathy, and I, we decided that it would take us about 5 years to get to that point. And so we made it, in essence, a 5-year plan.
Nice.
And I'd always been told, if you want to do something, you make a plan, you work a plan, and you succeed. Okay. So we made a plan, we worked the plan, and well, it worked. Yeah. So far. But it came to a point. Originally, the plan was not to put something in Woodland. It was actually going to be in the Sonoma area. The truth was, at that point in time, the city of Woodland was not very business positive. Subsequent couple of years after my decision to do this thing, they really did change to being a business positive environment, and I was very, very, very happy to decide that this is my hometown. This is really where I wanted to be. So it worked out.
Nice.
As would happen, just at that right time. Call it luck, call it fate, call it blessing. My wife sees that the old bank building on Main Street, which was Paco's Mexican restaurant, was open for sale as far as a business place and all that. So we looked into it. Yes, it was going to work out. Made the arrangements. Again, that's work the plan. And we, made it come together.
What are some of the steps that were your plan as far as leading up to what took the 5 years before you finally were ready to get the building?
Good questions. First off, I was not in the restaurant business. So go read books, talk to people who have succeeded, talk to people who have failed. Failure is a great educator. So you talk to people who had an idea and it didn't work. Find out why it didn't work.
Okay.
So you know, it really was a matter of twofold: get a business concept that you can put together to find enough money. My wife and I decided that we were going to do this all on our own. We were not going to, you know, get any investors or anything along those lines. We wanted it to be a family project. So you know, we start putting together a bunch of money, yeah. So that's kind of what we did. I did end up getting an SBA loan to start it, and that's harder than you think. But we did it, and
To start it or to get the loan?
To get the loan.
Okay.
To get the loan. They are
Hard loans.
they're thorough.
Okay.
We're just going to go with they are very thorough, and they are, you know, you really want one of those things, come and talk to me. I'll tell you about it. But I'll tell you, one of the very first things that I did was pay that off.
Okay.
Because working with the United States government is a little less fun than it sounds. But that's okay. You know, but it worked.
Yeah.
And that was part of the plan. And we were going to pay it off, even when I found that they were difficult to work with. They weren't impossible to work with. They were just difficult to work with.
Right.
But you come up with a plan. Yes, you don't want to stay in debt, so you pay things off as fast as you can get it, and fast as you can get it. And yes, that means you're not bringing home money for yourself, but you're getting the debt gone so that you can then eventually make money for yourself. When you are running a business like this, if you have investors, it really is a little different. You can extend this you know, sweet spot of business startup over a longer period of time. If you're financing it yourself, you need to get it moving.
Now, why did you decide not to use outside resources and just to use all your own, other than the loan?
Other than the loan, yeah. Well, you could call it several things. One of them is I don't like to do what other people tell me what to do.
Okay.
You know, I don't work and play well with others. That's why I'm self-employed. But no, really what it comes down to is I had my idea, and my idea was going to be a little less conventional.
Okay.
You know, the truth is, when I talked about a pub is, well, we have a restaurant. We are a restaurant. We are a bar. We have a bar. We are not a restaurant or a bar. Okay? A pub is a social environment.
Okay.
Okay? A pub is a social environment. When you look at the models of being a restaurant, you are literally looking at turning and burning people in and out. Get new you know,
Table times.
New people in that seat. New people in that seat. I had other words I was going to use, but
I know exactly what you're saying.
I was stumbling with that one. But you know, you got to get people in and out, and it's as fast as you can, so you can. You know, that's not what we do.
Okay.
We literally, and to try and justify that to investors would be difficult because it doesn't look right. As it turns out, it works.
Yeah.
But getting an investor to understand that originally would be difficult.
I get that.
So yeah, we go more for the experience than the turn and burn. As far as we have a bar, but we're not a bar, well, it's because the beverages that we serve, whether they're alcoholic or non-alcoholic, are just part of that social context. And you know, you can sometimes refer to beverages as liquid lube. And conversation and business, and people do meetings, and I get all kinds of students who are sitting around, and I've got Wi-Fi, and they're going to sit there and they do homework. I've got businessmen who run through. In essence, they use it as a stopping office. We have churches that run organizations in and out of the thing, events that happen there. People do. They do funerals and they do weddings, and all these things happen in this place. So it's not a typical restaurant.
So you're very active in the community then?
Yeah, we are very active in the community. Again, that's part of the concept. We are literally just a piece of the downtown.
Okay.
Okay. We are, but we are not the downtown. We are just a piece of it. There's all kinds of wonderful things downtown.
Yeah.
And they all have their pieces and their elements, and what they are and what they do for the city as a generality, for the community as a whole. So that's kind of the start of that one.
All right. So do you have any future goals as far as are you happy with where you're at, or do you have a goal of expanding, or what is your next big mission? Or are you just kind of content that you hit your goal and you're happy here?
Well, it is good. We were on a very, very good trajectory, and 2020 was going to be that year that literally we turned money, over. And then, of course, a pandemic happens, and so that changes everything. My original concept did have to do with getting myself to a certain point, making myself marketable at that point in time to investors to do a large expansion.
Okay.
That was the original concept. Right now, I won't say that that's my concept anymore.
Okay.
Maybe I'm jaded, or maybe I am just burned by that experience with the pandemic. But it did change my long-term goals. I am good where we're going right now, but am I actively looking for somebody? I would have by this point in time hopefully have been branching out. I don't see that in the very near future at all.
But you're content where you're at?
Content is never a good thing.
Are you happy?
I am happy.
Good.
I'm very happy. But content means you're not trying to move forward.
Okay.
No, we are always trying to move forward, always trying to make it better,
Yeah.
Always trying to reinvent yourself. We survived the pandemic because we literally reinvented ourselves over and over and over again. There were a lot of people that quit.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who hid.
There's still people suffering from that.
Oh yeah. When we went into the pandemic, I says, well, there's no way that this is going to last forever. So let's make a plan to survive this thing and thrive at the end of it.
Yeah.
And so most people, went to a cloistered frame, or they went to a very small version of themselves. We did end up becoming a takeout. We did end up doing all of that kind of stuff. Yes, I cut my staff way back because that's what we had to do. But in that, I was reinvesting in my company at that point in time, so that when it did come out, we came out as a bigger, better company, not just a surviving company.
Nice. That's good.
We've got in that old bank building, we've got what we call the whiskey vault. When we first opened, I had a very simple concept of, there's going to be, 30 Irish whiskeys, 30 Scottish whiskeys, 30 American whiskeys, maybe a couple of Japanese at some point in time, or something along those lines. But it was, 100 whiskeys or something like that going to be in there. Prior to the pandemic, we were at about 200 whiskeys in there, so that grew bigger than I had originally planned, and that was a good thing. We're near 500 whiskeys in there right now.
Wow.
Why? Because I saw an opportunity to buy things that other people were not.
Yeah. And give that back as an experience.
And now people come in, and it is truly a large experience for
Nice.
people. So that's survival of a pandemic. But the pandemic really did change some of my view of my future. I am currently, I'm about to be 62. So what's the next big battle I want to take? At the moment, I'm going to tell you, I don't know.
Okay.
There are more battles to take on. They're different than what I would have done prior to a pandemic, though.
Okay.
So COVID was a definer.
It was huge.
And I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's going to be different than what I thought.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
is that getting what you were looking for?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah.